We live in a world where convenience is king. Need a ride? Boom. Uber. It's become so ingrained in our lives, so ordinary that we barely think twice. Hop in, punch in the destination, and off you go. But what about the times it's not so simple? What about the rides that take an unexpected turn, a detour into the unsettling, the downright creepy? This isn't about ghosts or demons jumping out from the back seat. This is about the subtle chills, the unsettling feeling that something's not quite right. The hair on your neck standing on end as you glance at the driver's rearview mirror. The unsettling feeling of vulnerability as you realize you're utterly at the mercy of a stranger in a moving vehicle. We've all heard the stories, whispers passed around like ghost stories at a campfire. Rides that went too long, drivers who seemed to know a little too much, passengers who vanished without a trace. Urban legends, most would say. But what if they're not? What if, beneath the veneer of convenience, there lurks a darker side to the world of ride-sharing? This is a glimpse into that world. A collection of chilling encounters, unsettling tales from the back seat, reminders that sometimes the shortest distance between 2 points can be a journey into the unknown. Sarah had been working late. Exhausted, she just wanted to get home. She hailed an Uber, sank into the back seat, and closed her eyes. She was used to this routine, a familiar comfort in the hum of the engine, the city lights blurring past. But tonight felt different. She noticed the car was moving slower, the route unfamiliar. She checked the app. It wasn't the usual route, it wasn't even close. "Excuse me?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with unease. "This isn't the way to my address." The driver didn't react. He kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She checked the child lock, her fingers fumbling. It was engaged. Panic swelled, cold and sharp. Finally the driver spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "Shortcut," he mumbled, not taking his eyes off the road. The explanation did little to ease Sarah's fear. She clutched her phone, ready to call for help, her eyes darting to each passing street sign, each darkened alleyway. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each turn of the wheel feeding her mounting terror. Mark was a talkative guy. He liked to chat, fill the silence with idle conversation. But the driver in this Uber was different. He didn't respond to Mark's attempts at small talk, only stared straight ahead, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Then, the driver started talking. Not to Mark, but to himself. He muttered under his breath, fragments of sentences, names, addresses. Mark tried to ignore it, but the driver's voice grew louder, more agitated. He started mentioning things about Mark, his job, his recent breakup, details he hadn't shared. "How do you know that?" Mark asked, his voice betraying his growing unease. The driver didn't acknowledge him, lost in his own world of whispers and murmurs. Mark felt a chill crawl down his spine. He checked the app, but the driver's profile was blank, no name, no photo, just an empty void staring back at him. He felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't right. This was beyond creepy. He wanted out of the car, now. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling as he typed in his home address, desperately hoping it was close. Every minute felt like an hour, the driver's mutterings a constant, unsettling soundtrack to his fear. There's something inherently unsettling about being in a moving vehicle, strapped in, unable to escape. You're at the mercy of the driver, your fate intertwined with theirs. It's a feeling that Emily knew all too well. She had hailed an Uber after a late-night study session, her mind buzzing with caffeine and exhaustion. She dozed off, lulled by the familiar hum of the engine. When she woke, something felt off. The car was moving erratically, speeding up and slowing down, weaving in and out of traffic. She looked at the driver. His eyes were wild, his face contorted in a grimace. He was yelling, shouting at other drivers, at pedestrians, at the empty air. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to scream to tell him to stop, but fear froze her voice. She was trapped. The child lock, a safety feature, now felt like a prison bar. She couldn't open the door, couldn't escape the erratic, terrifying ride. She clutched her phone, her knuckles white, her thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Each jolt of the car, each angry outburst from the driver pushed her closer to making the call. Her escape, Her safety felt miles away at the mercy of a stranger who had lost control. David had been driving for Uber for a few years. He'd seen it all. Drunk passengers, chatty passengers, passengers who wouldn't stop singing along to the radio. But nothing could have prepared him for this. He picked up a woman at a dimly lit street corner. She was dressed in black, her face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. She didn't speak, just gestured for him to drive. The address she'd entered was in a remote part of town, deserted warehouses and abandoned lots. As they drove, David felt a growing unease. The woman was silent, her presence heavy and oppressive. He stole glances at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was still hidden in shadow, but he could feel her eyes on him, cold and penetrating. He tried to make conversation, to break the unnerving silence, but the woman didn't respond. She just sat there, an enigma in the back seat, her silence speaking volumes. With each passing mile, David felt a growing sense of dread. He wanted to ask her to get out, to abandon the ride, but something held him back. It was as if he was being drawn deeper into a nightmare, powerless to resist. Olivia was used to late-night rides. As a bartender, her shifts often ended long after dark. She always felt a pang of unease getting into a stranger's car, but she had her routines. She'd share her location with friends, make sure someone knew where she was going. This night felt different. The driver was overly friendly, too eager to chat. He kept asking personal questions, commenting on her appearance. Olivia tried to keep it light, to brush off his advances, but the feeling of unease grew stronger with each passing block. She discreetly texted her roommate, sending her location and a simple message: SOS. Her heart pounded in her chest as she pretended to be engrossed in her phone, her eyes darting between the screen and the driver's reflection in the mirror. The driver kept talking, his voice a grating hum, but Olivia had tuned him out. She was focused on her escape plan, on the reassuring blue dot on her roommate's phone, slowly moving closer to her destination. Every minute felt like an eternity, the forced smile on her face a mask for the fear that gnawed at her insides. There are stories, whispers on the internet, of Uber drivers who disappear. One minute they're there, the next they're gone. Just an empty car, rolling to a stop. It sounds like an urban legend, a creepypasta to scare gullible teenagers. But what if it's real? That's what Ben found himself wondering. He had ordered an Uber late one night, after a party. He stumbled into the back seat, feeling the familiar haze of alcohol dulling his senses. He mumbled his address, then drifted off to sleep. He woke with a jolt. The car was stopped, the engine silent. He looked around confused. The street was empty, lined with darkened houses. He checked the app, but it was frozen, the driver's profile blank. He got out of the car, his head spinning. He looked around for the driver, but he was nowhere to be seen. No footsteps, no sound of retreating engines, just an eerie silence that pressed in on him. He stood there, alone on the empty street, his drunken fog replaced by a cold wave of fear. The car, his ride, his escape was now just an empty shell, a silent testament to his growing unease. Sometimes the most unnerving thing is the absence of sound, the silence that hangs heavy in the air, pregnant with unspoken tension. It's in those moments, when the world seems to hold its breath, that fear takes root. Maria had been in the Uber for almost an hour. It was a long drive, a journey into the quiet countryside. The driver had been chatty at first, but then he fell silent, completely silent. No radio, no humming along to a tune, just the sound of the engine and the wind whistling past the windows. The silence stretched on, unbroken, suffocating. The setting sun cast long shadows across the empty fields, painting the world in shades of gray and black. Maria felt a shiver run down her spine. She tried to break the silence, asking about the route, about the weather, anything to fill the void. But the driver didn't respond. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his silence a deafening roar in the confines of the car. Maria felt a growing sense of unease, a primal fear that whispered of unseen dangers lurking just beyond the reach of the headlights. These stories are a glimpse into the darker side of ride-sharing, a reminder that even the most commonplace activities can harbor a hint of the unsettling, the unknown. While these encounters are rare, they serve as a reminder to stay vigilant, to trust your instincts. Always share your ride details with friends or family. Check the driver's profile, make sure it matches the car and the person behind the wheel. Trust your gut. If something feels off, if the driver's behavior makes you uncomfortable, don't hesitate to ask them to stop the car or to call for help. The convenience of ride-sharing is undeniable, but it's important to remember that we're still stepping into a stranger's car, entrusting our safety to someone we know nothing about. By staying alert, by trusting our instincts, we can navigate the world of ride-sharing safely, avoiding the detours into the unsettling and the unknown. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the shortest distance between 2 points can be a journey into the eerie and unsettling.